Is being skeptical always reasonable? One of the main things you hear atheists talk about these days is skepticism. But is it always reasonable to be skeptical? Exactly how far should we take skepticism? Should we be skeptical about everything, including skepticism itself? Of course, that's the one thing that skeptics don't want to be skeptical about. But if you follow skepticism to its logical conclusion, that's what you end up with, unless you want a special plea, of course. However, if someone is presented with good evidence, should they still remain skeptical? I think skepticism, just like any other position, should be justified. That is to say, I don't think someone should be skeptical just to be skeptical. It needs to be reasonable. For example, someone could say they're skeptical about their own existence, but would that be a reasonable skepticism? Well, unless they have good reasons to doubt their own existence, it wouldn't be reasonable to doubt it. And of course, it's self-defeating, because being able to doubt something entails that you exist. But I think atheists tend to use skepticism as a way to dodge good arguments and good evidence for God's existence. For instance, a lot of atheists try to set the stage by claiming that only scientific evidence is acceptable. But that very claim itself is not scientific and can't be verified through scientific means, because it is a philosophical claim. So to make a philosophical claim that only scientific evidence is acceptable is self-defeating. The argument for God is that he transcends the natural world. But since science deals directly with the natural world, I don't think it's reasonable to think that we would find any direct scientific evidence of God. Although I think there is certainly a lot of indirect scientific evidence of God, such as the universal constants, information being stored in DNA, and so forth. However, in this video, I'm not actually giving an argument for God's existence, but rather I'm simply attempting to expose the fallacy in the claim that we should always be skeptical. This kind of reasoning reminds me of when atheists try to argue for the internality of the universe from a point of possibility. They might say something along the lines of, isn't it possible for the universe to just be eternal? So my response is, do you actually have an argument for the universe being eternal? If not, then all you're doing is begging the question. And we can all do that with anything. The truth is, anything is possible, but we have to base our conclusions on what is reasonable and what is supported by arguments and evidence. The reason this reminds me of how atheists tend to use skepticism is because, just like with appealing to unsupported possibilities, sometimes they will appeal to skepticism without a justification when they're presented with a sound argument for God's existence. Or they might be presented with a scenario to see what actually would convince them. For example, I know Matt Dillahunty has been presented with a number of scenarios over the years about what would convince him. Everything from God riding in the sky to God appearing to him, and his response is always, he doesn't know how he would know it was God. But surely, in the absence of some defeater, it would be reasonable to conclude that it was God, right? So the next time someone tells you they're skeptical about something, make sure you ask them the reasons to see if it's a reasonable skepticism. Because there is a difference. Not all skepticism is reasonable. Well, guys, that's the video. So let me know what you think. And remember to like and subscribe.